Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sara Lihz and I have an adorable card project for you today. We're going to use just a few supplies. So I have this Falling Stars Betterpress plate, Swinging Among the Stars, which is a die set from Spellbinders. And then we're going to use a halo light from Pear Blossom Press. This has 5 lights in a circle, like a halo of light. And it's really the star of the show. We'll also use this World's Best foam tape from Pear Blossom to assemble our card and make sure we have plenty of room for the battery. I'm going to begin by ink blending a panel of white cardstock. It's a full A2 panel, and I have chosen the palest pink ink I have, and clearly it needs to be re-inked. So I'm having to go back to my ink pad quite a bit for this one. But I really wanted this to be like a pure baby pink and not one that leans into magenta. So I started with that. I want my palest color down first, and then I'll bring in some light blue ink. I want just a little bit of overlap with the pink, but not a lot. I will come in later with some purple just to make sure I can preserve some of that pink. I find it easiest to start with my lightest ink and then move darker. Otherwise, my light ink sometimes gets lost. For a little depth and dimension, I'm also bringing in a little bit of navy. And when that hits the pink, you see this really beautiful purple happening. That's like a bluish purple. So when I come in with my other purple ink, this one is a warmer, redder purple. And that will just give me that extra warmth and pop of color all around. You could certainly use pattern paper here instead. I released some free digital paper back in February, I want to say, that would work really, really well for this. And it's like an ombre of color. So I might try that next time. I'm going to use the Betterpress to add a little bit of star texture on our background and some Brilliance silver ink. I find this works really, really well with Betterpress plates. But I did show you there's a 3D embossing folder that goes with this collection. It's actually really beautiful when you pair it with the Betterpress plate. But I knew I was going to cut a hole in my front panel, and that's sometimes tricky with an embossing folder. So if you were going to make a card like this and you weren't going to light it up, that would work beautifully. But for our purposes, I love that I haven't really changed the texture of my background by running that through with my Betterpress plate. This little die set is so cute. And here's the thing. I know that lots of us don't need baby cards, right? We're past that phase, or we've been past that phase twice. But I love a cute critter, and these critters are adorable. There's an elephant and there's a hippopotamus in this one, and I am going to dress him up for Christmas when the time is right. Like, it's happening. It's going to happen. I think there are lots of ways you could get tons of use out of these. I also think the star that we're going to light up reminds me a little bit of like a Super Mario Brothers kind of star. Not quite the same, but I could make it pretty similar. And so I'm going to get double duty use out of that one, making cards for my little boys. So I'm just assembling the die cuts here, and they're really pretty straightforward. I love that there's even pieces for the cheeks and for the eyes. You just glue them right behind there, and it's super simple to put together. But one of the challenges here is that if you make this a swinging element, you can see there's a little like hole at the top of the ropes. If you want to make it a swinging element, it just barely fits on an A2 panel. So I'm still sorting that out, but I'm trying to figure out where my light is going to go. Here's my halo light and the 5 lights. And how do I make sure that I'm going to be able to get into that battery pack so that I can replace that battery down the road when it finally wears out? So I like to install mine upside down. That way it's easier to get to from inside the card. And so I'm going to take a marker and I'm just marking on the back of the light where each of those 5 lights are, because I need them to be in the points of the star. The star is not perfectly symmetrical is the wrong word, but not all of the points are the same. So I'm having to figure out how it's going to fit best. The best way it fits is actually a terrible place to put the button. So we're going to maneuver things. I'm going to lean this to the left so that I can stick the light hanging out to the side. The button will be off to the side, and then I can create pretty easily a flap on the card base. So once I get it figured out, I'm going to go ahead and tape that star outline die to my panel. There is an insert you can put in there to cut out a face and do a whole thing. I'm going to do that a little bit later with a yellow piece. But for now, I just want to line up my card panel for the front on my A2 card base. Mine is top folding, but you could absolutely use side folding for this. When I trace it, it makes it really easy then for me to line up the dots I put on my halo light with those 5 points. And then once I get it where I want it, I'm going to trace around that little piece at the bottom right here where I have my button and my battery. I want to create a little escape hatch. Sometimes if this ends up in the middle of my card, there is a press. It's like a stamp and die bundle from Pear Blossom. It's a small little set, but it has essentially a rectangle where one of the sides is just a score line. So it creates like a hatch, like an exit door for the battery. But I didn't need it here. I am just using my scissors and cutting in right along where the edges of that battery pack are. And then I used a scoring tool and a ruler to create a score line. So here I cut the face piece out of a piece of just yellow printer paper. I have no idea why I ever bought this, but I've had it in my craft room forever. I figured I'd use it. If you didn't have that, you could color on some vellum or you could color on some printer paper. I worry a little bit about the printer paper taking that much ink and then it's not that sturdy after that. But I've added glue all around the outside of it, and then I'll try and lay my panel on top just so that it's sort of centered in there. I clipped off the extra already. You saw that. Printer paper is not super sturdy. So I'm going to put some heavyweight acetate right behind it to make sure that it's going to hold up over time. This is a baby card after all, and my kids have a lot of the keepsakes that they were given when they were born. They're just in their room and they play with them and they mess with them and they're not real gentle, right? So I'm going to finish off this star by adding in the little pieces that I cut after I did the yellow piece. I have little cheeks and there's like debossed detail for those cheeks so you know exactly where they go. And then I cut the star out with some white glitter paper for the pieces on the tips of the star and then a piece of black cardstock right back behind the eyes. If I was gonna do this again, I would have put some double-sided adhesive on that acetate, like one of the big rolls or some rip and stick sheet from Trinity Stamps. And then that sort of yellow printer paper would have adhered perfectly to it. And as I'm inlaying things like the eyes and little pieces on the star, it would just automatically stick. But as it is, I am using the pokey end of my pickup stick and just adding little bits of glue back in there. It worked fine. It's just a little more time consuming. So I'm going to go ahead and add my basket onto the end of my ropes. And then I will just clip off the top piece to try to make it the right size for our card and the star that we have since we aren't making a swinging element. So I'm going to lay it down and then you can see you can just tuck the little body of the elephant behind it. If you didn't want to do this sort of air balloon, it feels very much like a baby card, I think. If you didn't want to do that, there's another set that came out in the same collection called Kart Go, and I'm pretty sure you can put both of the critters from this set into that little car and you could light up the headlights on it. That would be super fun too. In fact, I may try that. I may try that sometime soon. I tell you what, friends, I have so many cards I want to make right now, and I'm absolutely obsessed with light up cards. So let me know what you want to see me light up next in the comments below. I would love to get your input. There are 2 different clouds in this die set, and so I just cut the 2 of them a whole bunch of times, and I'm going to glue them around my card. I want them to feel sort of random. I want them to go off the edge of the card so it feels like the scene doesn't just stop at the edges. So a little bit of wet glue, and then when I'm all done getting those laid out, I can just use my scissors and trim off the excess. From here, I can add my elephant in the basket, and I tell you what, I was kind of nervous about this, and I don't know why. It wasn't hard, but I knew I was going to have to clip off that part at the top. So I'm just going to hold it in place, make sure it fits onto the card, and I'll come in with my scissors and just snip gently. But like that rope's a little malleable, right? And so I can sort of wiggle and maneuver things until they fit right. I just want to make sure that I'm trying to lay down the pieces of the rope that touch the star first instead of laying down the basket and then being like, oh, that's not close enough. It doesn't reach. So that's it. I just glued it down. Piece of cake. I don't know what I was worried about. But from here, we can move on to the fun part where we're going to light things up. So to get the placement for my light, I'm going to flip it over, and I've added some double-sided adhesive tape just on the part where the battery is. I have in the past sometimes put it around the circle a little bit too, but I'm not sure that's altogether necessary. I'm double checking and making sure my lights are in place, but I traced around the whole thing before we finished that front panel. So then I can just lay my front panel over top of the card base, lining them up, and now my light is stuck to the front panel. This is going to make it so much easier to change out that battery later. As far as light up cards go, placing the foam tape on this one is really straightforward. I want to make sure I don't have any foam tape overlapping our little trap door. And I want to make sure I'm not going to overlap the lights at all, but the halo lights are so big and it's so clear where it goes that it's not really an issue. To add my panel onto my card, I'm just putting the panel in a box lid just so I get that straight edge up at the top. And then I will lay my card with the fold at the top along that same edge. Then I'm good to go. If I had ended up a little to the right or left, I could always trim that off, but you can't trim the fold. So that's always what I'm focused on when I put the two together. I'm going to use one of my free printable sentiments. This one came from a kit that came out last spring. I think the entire kit includes like Mother's Day sentiments and new baby sentiments. It's from volume 30. And so I will just link below with all the other supplies to the video that has that attached in the description box. It's a free download. I'm using the sentiment that says, "Hello, sweet baby." I was hoping to use one of the larger versions of that sentiment. It also comes in a circle and in a rectangle, and I really like the fonts on it, but I didn't leave myself a really great place to put a bigger sentiment. So we're just going to use a strip sentiment here. I've stacked it up 3 times. Sometimes when I'm using a strip sentiment, I want to give it like a little more weight, make it feel a little more important. And so stacking it up will do that for me. Then these are about 1/4 inch. I have a strip of gold cardstock that's about 3/8 of an inch. So it gives me this really fine, beautiful border all the way around the outside. This is a longer strip than I need. It's left over from a previous sentiment. So I will line up the top, bottom, and left-hand margins, and then I will just take it to my trimmer and trim away carefully until that margin matches the other 3. And I have this really great sentiment. I put foam tape on half of it because it's going to overlap our basket a little bit, and I didn't want it to sag on that right-hand side, but I'll glue that down. And then the front panel is nearly done. I didn't stamp push on the front anywhere. It's about 50-50 whether or not I do. I think it depends on whether or not it would interrupt the design, and I didn't want it on this one. So this star right here that I'm gluing down, the button's right behind that one. So I'll just write a note on the inside that says push on the largest star. There's another that's the same size, but half of it's going to get cut off when I go to finish the card, right? We're just going to trim off that edge. So really there's an obvious one biggest star. I have 2 things left to do to finish off this card. On the back, I'm putting my Sassy's LLC, growing the crafting community 1 sentiment at a time. And then on the inside, I'll add a little bit of removable adhesive that will stick to the top of the battery, and that will keep it closed. So there's our finished card, my friends. You press the button, and I love the glow from this light. When you open it up, here's how easy it is to remove that battery. You've got room to just slide your thumb right in there and then slide the battery out. You can put a new one in there. I hope that this inspires you. I would love to know what you've been lighting up lately. Leave me a comment below, and I will see you next time.